All right, so let's pick back up with activities for in office or remote. And this kind of relates back to what we talked about with fully remote is the asynchronous synchronous thing. You have to think about what are the things that when I go into the office are things that are better for me to do when I'm there. Maybe it's a certain type of equipment that you want to use or a resource that you can't use as well remotely. It's the meetings, the collaboration time that you have with certain people at the office versus when on your remote days is when you do your more asynchronous work. Maybe it's preparation for some of the things that you're going to do when you're actually all together in the office.
As you think about the meetings that are going to be with your time in the office, what type of meetings would you need to be in person that you couldn't do over video? What would that look like for you in your mind or in your experience? I know you've done a ton of meetings, both in person, a lot of them through video. What would be a good use of that in office time?
One example that pops into my mind very quickly, just being in the AV world, is if there's a piece of equipment that we're looking at together, sometimes that's better to do when we're all in the same room. It's a tactile thing versus you can do that remotely, but it takes more preparation and can be more challenging to make sure we all looking at the same thing. Is it zoomed in? Was it, do I need to take a picture of this? We both have the equipment at our respective remote locations so we can look at it together that way. But I think when you're doing something more tactile, that's definitely an easier thing to do in person in the same space in the same room than it would be remotely without extra preparation or accommodation.
Yeah, I think as you look at designing an effective hybrid remote work environment, it would be very easy just to slip into filling those in-person, in-office days with meetings where you're going to have back-to-back meetings. And then that falls into this could have been an email. We didn't all need to be in office to do this. So I really like your example of it's something that is tactile. If it is something that, at the headquarters, if there are labs or hands-on experiences that you need to all be together. And I also think of it as the best use of time. And is there a value in being able to handle the questions very quickly? And I know we've talked about this. There are definitely tools you can use, both the face-to-face and hybrid, to handle that. But I think it definitely needs to be thoughtful and not just we've got back to back to back meetings and we're just going to fill it full. What would you do, especially if you've got the 2 days each week to do that? So that's one of the things that I think we'll see in some of the numbers where it's not very thoughtful. Because if it's a company that the managers haven't been trained on it, they're just going to be, this is how we do things, and not take into account the differences of synchronous, asynchronous, in person, or remote. And you have more flexibility to do things and how to design things.
That's why when I first heard this whole 3 days in office, 2 days remote thing, I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily a good practice either. Because it's, do I need to be in the office 3 days this week? Like you're just saying, if it's still something that I could do just as well remotely, if it's just a meeting, you know what I mean? I don't know if it'll ever get there, especially in large companies where they have all these policies because they're so worried about somebody taking advantage of the company. But it should be you come to the office when there's a reason to come to the office. And when there's not a reason to come to the office, you don't need to worry about coming to the office. In my example in the intro, the company I worked for, we didn't have a policy, but it was an understood thing. Like he's going to be in the office when he has a reason to be in the office. And when he doesn't have a reason to be in the office, he's not going to come in here.
I could see it working with some onboarding activities with younger employees that are new to the organization. Perhaps that's a good reason to be together where you have cross-functional teams that are working with a new hire type of program. Because the one thing to think about when you come into the office is that number of interruptions you're going to have. And What type of work are you going to be doing when you're in office? What does that look like? The survey that was done, it was 1,000 IT managers, HR, so it was across different industries. One of the things they found were that the in-office time, in-office employees face nearly double the interruptions per day compared to your hybrid workers. So a lot less productivity and even a lot more stress because if you can't get your work done while you're in person, then you still have to get that work done. And I know that was something that we ran into when I was in office. Some days where I'd have big projects to do, stuff that I needed to get done. And there would be so many meetings and interruptions, I couldn't get it done. So then I would have 2 or 3 hours of work at night because during my 8 hour workday, I wasn't able to focus and get that done.
And I had that experience too, where when I'd go into the office, people would be interrupting me with questions all day long. And I'd be thinking, this isn't happening when I'm working remotely. Yeah, I would get pinged on things here and there, but not this constant questioning.
They saved them up until you were in office and they were like, you know what, it'll just be quicker. I can just ask him all of these in person.
Yeah, maybe it could be like when you're not there, they just keep going to the next office till they find somebody to ask the question to. I don't know. It's been so long since I'm in an office. I'm wondering, this was like before the Slacks and the Teams and those types of resources were majorly introduced. Would that be different now? Are people more apt to use those resources to ask those things? I would hope so.
I would say definitely in the design of the remote hybrid work, I would definitely look at what are the meeting protocols, both for the virtual and the in person. I would look at what's the technology that you have access to and how are we going to use those and what are the expectations for each of those different types of communication tools. And then also, what does collaboration mean? What does it look like in the environment? And then how do we use the technology and the meeting protocols to support that? I think it is the design of all of that. And so that training does become really important for the people who are managing the group. And if they've never been at a lower level and been hybrid or remote, and they've always been in person, and then they're trying to figure out these things, that's a hot mess. It can be very inefficient.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say too, because I think we're seeing reports of this kind of back to my, I'm not 100% sold on that you need to be in the office 3 days a week and remote too is great either. Because I come into the office and then all day I'm on Zoom calls. Why did I have to come into the office to do this? It's because it's my in office day. What a waste to do that. I'm not really sold on having it that specified.
I think having it specified is a good thing, but it has to be with intention and not just we're going to have these 2 days at this time. It is a balance of having consistency and so everybody knows what's going on, but then also having flexibility so it can be responsive and we don't end up doing something just because it's Tuesday.
I think a better practice might be like, these are my in office days. If there's something that I need to be in the office for, if it's not scheduled with me, I'm not coming into the office. Also, not be like, oh, I'll just do that with him the next time I see him at the office. That's not appropriate either. Because if I'm going into the office, here's what I have planned for today. And then somebody's, oh, I'm glad I see you. I have these things I need to talk to you about. And today's not the day. You didn't schedule this with me. And again, that might be more of a, I'm totally not like, I can be spontaneous, but I'm a planner. Here's what I'm going to do today based on what I know. I'm going to leave margin in there for things that come up that are unanticipated. But if somebody else is, oh, yeah, I have all these things I want to talk to you about, and it's why didn't you schedule some time with me? Don't just walk in and eat up an hour of my time with all these things.
Yeah, it's definitely the by design and it's using time wisely. So having it available, these are the days if we need to be in office for something or need to be together for X, Y, or Z task or outing, or we've got a new piece of equipment, whatever it is, it's going to be on one of these 3 days. So You know that if you're using some of your flexible time to, if you have a doctor's appointment or something else, you're not going to put it on these 3 days of the week. Because if we have something we need to do, the expectation is you will be available on these 3 days.
That totally makes sense to me. That I could definitely get on board with something like that.
And then to have the culture be, we're going to schedule as much as we can, but also know that sometimes it will be last minute. You might know at least the day before. It depends on what your commutes are too. If you've got people that are flying in, that's going to take more lead time.
All right, I think wraps up our in-office remote part of the conversation. So last part, we're going to just talk about some very specific challenges to hybrid remote work before we close things up.